Hey, what's up, guys? Today is 4/21, the day after this degenerate holiday for the weed people, where they're like, guys, 4/20, 4/20. Yeah. So because of that, I'm going to be talking about weed's impact on your brain. So this is based off a Snapchat memory that I have from August of some research I was doing that I wrote down and posted on my private story. So pretty much we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna try and explain the neurological structure change, and what dependence is, what it looks like. Yeah. So let me preface this video with I used to smoke a lot of weed. So I'm not hating. I'm not being like, you fucking bitch or anything. But it's not a great habit. I can say that much. Yeah. Alright, so that's what I wrote in the Snapchat memory, and then I will elaborate. Alcohol will neurodegenerate your brain in more of a belligerent retardation way, where you watch as things go bad after a few weeks of drinking frequently, from the cognitive standpoint. Your memory starts to get really bad and days begin to mash together. If kept up for 10 to 20 years of alcoholism, dementia will ensue. The craving for alcohol is quite different from weed because it has an addictive effect. With weed, it is pretty different from the neurodegenerate. Comes in your dopamine receptors after a few weeks of smoking frequently and becomes noticeable from a brain standpoint then, and therefore affects your motivation and memory first, and your happiness. The long-term consequences of weed on your brain are quite different from alcohol due to an isozyme called COX-2, which is produced more when smoking regularly than on a one-off occurrence. The difference is COX-2 inhibition prevents damages to your brain. COX-2 is a massive variable from person to person based off genetics, diet, and cortisol release. That is why some people are hungover and stupid the next day after smoking, and others are seemingly unaffected. By no means does this mean that there are no negative effects. Alcohol takes considerably longer to notice the harm on your brain. And then I wrote, weed and alcohol keep a man chained, but nicotine frees the mind. Quote Alex Jones. And then I said, yeah, but the weed thing doesn't mean that the weed thing is that weed doesn't have an addictive effect on the brain. So many people think, blah, 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 it's a plant, it can't hurt me. And then I wrote, like, go smoke Datura then. If you don't know what Datura is, it's like insanity is what it is. And then I wrote, nah, but because it doesn't have the same dopamine effect, many people, the same dopamine effect, many people that it's non-problematic because it doesn't have an addictive hook like many other drugs. Anyways, that last sentence really doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what I was on with that. So, pretty much, it's like I said, the neurodegeneration of alcohol in your brain is much more of an impairment of the cognitive structures versus weed is going to hurt your dopamine levels considerably more. So I just read a considerable amount about it. Let me say that as well. Just because it's a plant doesn't mean it's okay. The same thing with, I hear Christians say this. Well, God put it on earth, so it had to have been fine. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was put on earth, put in the garden for them to choose. They want it. And that was when they were in their perfected state, when they hadn't fallen yet. So you think after the fall, God's going to be like, well, no, I won't put that there because it's bad. Like, bro, there's poisonous plants. Are you stupid? There's Datura. Datura, by the way, a quick explanation. Datura is a deliriant. It's absolutely insane. Native Americans used to take it at the age of 18, I would believe. And pretty much it's like insane delirium. So, like, people would say, oh, well, I drank some Datura tea and I woke up 21 days later in a field naked with zero recollection of what I've done. So you know how Benadryl is? You know, like the Benadryl challenge? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. That's the same thing, same class, deliriants, right? And so you just get put into a delirium. And you really think that God wants you to be taking that? Same thing with magic mushrooms. You really think that that's a Christian thing to do? Well, God put it on earth. You're stupid. Alright. So, like I was saying, alcohol will actually give you dementia as time goes on. Hence, why being single is the number one predictor of being demented, because a lot of people that are single drink a lot more, they live more unhealthy lifestyles, in addition to obviously, like, you're older and you have a wife, you're talking every day, challenging your brain, you're older and you're single, you just watch TV, right? Anyways, so to the point of the video. So, frequent weed smoking in adolescence has been tied to a lower hippocampal volume, aka a decline in multiple cognitive domains, including episodic, semantic, working memory, and visuospatial abilities. So, you're pretty much just... This is the thing with weed, is that, like, it's harder for people to be like, no, I shouldn't do that. Because, I mean, A, it's fairly normal. I talked about some of these concepts, by the way, in my normalizing psychedelics and weed video. But also because it's not as degenerative as alcohol. You drink alcohol every day, you're gonna really feel it after a week or two. You smoke weed every day, yeah, you'll be stupider and less motivated, but it's gonna be considerably less of an effect. So all this being said, guys, way worse to drink alcohol frequently than smoke weed frequently, but they're both awful, of course. So, all that, and then also, you increase the gray matter in your brain when you smoke weed, hence why there's a billion studies about young men smoking weed and giving themselves schizophrenia, which is heavily tied to gray matter. Of course, we don't really know the cause of schizophrenia entirely, but we do know that it's tied to gray matter in your brain. So there's a huge increase in gray matter in a bunch of different places in your brain when you're smoking weed. So it's all that. And then it also, obviously, like I said, ties to motivation, because you're introducing a drug that's going to increase your dopamine and serotonin levels, right, through an engagement of your cannabinoid receptors. Kind of like if you were to go exercise, you get the runner's high feeling. That's engaging your endocannabinoid receptors. And so, because of that, it's like you're engaging them, but you're not engaging them through working, so therefore it's just going to drop your levels, right? Versus if you were to engage your receptors through running and up your dopamine and serotonin levels, it's not going to put as much of an affect on it. You're not going to feel depressed when you don't run compared to weed. And I remember I saw this Instagram video of this guy talking. I'm going to pull it up really quick.
Don't smoke is the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Because I'm re-upping the second money hit my name. Just be going through like the fucking stories on Snapchat, and I see the plug posting about how if you ain't got money to smoke, don't smoke. Like, bro, I'm your customer. Why are you trying to drive me away? Why are you trying to make me think about where I'm gonna put my money at? And you think about it, you're like, yeah, no money to smoke, don't smoke. That makes sense. But I would also love to be geeked right now. And it's even worse when you're stuck in like the predicament where like you literally got no money. Payday in 2 weeks. You just ran out of pack. But you know you're broke when you just had to quit. The day after quitting Zob, you like you getting your whole life together too. You like start making your bed, wake up in the morning, get the coffee, you like reading the newspaper and shit. Start like folding laundry. It's like, damn, I done more in this first hour than I did all the last 6 months I was smoking. That first night be brutal though. First night no Zob, tossing and turning. Oh, I can't go to sleep. You're a fucking fiend. Motherfucker got me over here looking at how to fall asleep in 30 seconds. It's like, hello, here are 6 military techniques to fall asleep anywhere. I remember one time I lost my fucking cart. Like I just lost it in my house somewhere. I was so sad on the fact that my mom took it and just didn't say anything. So I literally just exposed myself. I was like, Mom, where the fuck did you put my cart? She's like, what the fuck is that cart? And I was like, you're fucking lying to me right now. I made my whole family, like, we ripped apart my room looking for the cart. And they didn't take it. It was under the bed. But I swear I looked under the bed. Smoking just keep me in a loop. Like, you look back, like, damn, I started smoking again back in April. Yeah, I definitely look the same. I do the same shit. If anything, I'm still a piece of shit. But, like, you know that. And then once you start thinking about, fuck, yeah, I really haven't done shit this year. You're like, oh, I should just...
Yeah, so I don't know, I saw that and I was like, bro, is encapsulating the weed smokers so well. It's like you're introducing this drug to your brain that's upping your levels in dopamine and serotonin, in addition to making you tired. Hence why he's like, that first night with no za, you be tossing and turning. I'd be looking up how to fall asleep in 30 seconds. Military techniques and shit. And he's talking about like that first day that you're waking up, you're more productive than the whole time that you were smoking. That's like how it is for these people, bro. And like I was saying, with the effects not being as bad as alcohol and it being way more societally acceptable, it's weird. I talk about this with people, like people that smoke weed. You're good. People that smoke weed, everyone smokes hella. No one's like a one-off person. Versus everyone that drinks, it's like if you drink all the time, you're fucking weird, right? But it's like they're kind of opposites, you know. It's like if you smoke all the time, it's normal. If you smoke, and if you smoke every once in a while, it's unusual. Versus if you drink all the time, it's really unusual. And if you drink every once in a while, it's normal, right? But yeah, I mean, with the stuff that you were saying about like you being more productive, that's what it's doing to your brain. Your dopamine level's going way down, and that also ties to a few other things, right? So it's heavily tied to, I'm gonna butcher this so hard, but sorry, I had to scroll through this stuff I wrote down. Alright, so pretty much this is tied to your nucleus accumbens, which is a structure in your brain's reward circuitry. It does motivation, reinforcement, pleasure, and addiction, right? So your motivation drops because obviously this is impairing your nucleus accumbens, right? So because your dopamine levels are used to being really high, then suddenly you don't get the introduction, everything's low, and you don't want to work, right? I mean, it's like, I think I said this in one of my videos. My best friend at home, talking one day, and he goes, you know, whatever happens today, I just know I'm getting high as shit at the end of the night. It's like, that makes sense though, that people think like that, right? Because like, you don't need your life to be great when you're just gonna be high as shit that night, you know? You don't need everything to be going super well in the sober world because you're just gonna escape it, right? But yeah, I mean, the impact on motivation lasts like just because of your dopamine levels, really. Like when your dopamine levels are set at a very low point, right? So like, for example, let's say you work 10-hour shifts, right? You're gonna feel way happier when you see a funny Instagram meme after your 10-hour shift than if you were to just be sitting around all day doing nothing, right? And that's because when you're sitting around all day just fucking around, whatever, that's funny, dopamine levels spike up, right? From just chilling, less cortisol and shit. But when your cortisol levels are high and your dopamine is low, then you're gonna be seeing that one Instagram meme, loving it, absolutely dying, right? It's the same thing. That's like the biggest impact, and that's what actually causes the problems in these people's lives, is that like, I don't even think it's as much that they're spending hours a day being high. I think it's literally just that when they're sober, their dopamine levels are so dropped that they find it difficult to work hard, you know? But these effects will last, right? This isn't like just something that happens while you're smoking, although it's considerably worse while you're smoking frequently. It still, to an extent, is going to stick in your brain just because you got acclimated to it. So, what are the other problems that come with smoking weed as an adolescent? You can develop abnormal frontoparietal network activities, which pretty much is going to affect your attention, memory, decision making, and cognitive control, aka it can make you have ADHD, or get this, it can cause you to have, this is weird, generalized anxiety, OCD, or rumination related depressive disorders, right? And obviously it's going to disrupt your cognitive processes and information processing. And I mean, yeah, it can give you those disorders, but even if you're not an adolescent and your brain is done developing, it'll still harm the network, giving you the characteristics of some of the disorders, but it's less long term. It's less likely to stay because your brain is done formulating, right? So like, if you're 26 and you start smoking every day, you're going to begin to exhibit some of the characteristics of someone with anxiety and ADHD without actually developing those, because the brain can't stay changed. It's not going to fully degenerate it. It'll just Like, it's not going to degenerate and stay like that. It's just going to temporarily degenerate it until it's cleared out of your system, which if you're smoking every day, it's going to take months to clear out of your system, or it just won't if you keep smoking every day, right? So, like, how it works with how long it takes to clear out of your system, if you're smoking every day, 30 to 70 days, depending on how much you exercise, how much you eat, how your metabolism is, right? So, like, if your metabolism is good and you exercise a lot and you eat a lot and you drink a lot of water, then 30 days at most likely around 20-ish, until it's fully cleared out of your system, aka the cognitive impairments stop from just smoking, and the ones that are long term will stay, right? So then you'll get to see like how much stuff is actually messing with you. So otherwise known as these symptoms that I just explained will go away. And also the parietal network issues can lead to schizophrenia. That's honestly, like, that was a big reason of why I stopped smoking, bro. Because once I started researching it and I realized I could get schizophrenia, I was like, oh, fuck no, bro. You got me fucked up, man. I think I'm going to continue doing this shit. So, the other thing is your amygdala volume will decrease, right? And pretty much the amygdala structure is your emotional regulation, and a larger amygdala volume is associated with having a behavioral disorder. So, like, for example, prenatal maternal depression associated with structural changes in the amygdala, which causes an increase in behavioral problems, and girls are particularly vulnerable to having a larger amygdala and having it affect them, right? Having a smaller amygdala is pretty much reminiscent of having severe persistent aggression and the development of a psychopathic personality. So it's kind of like I remember my ex told me that she's like, when you stopped smoking you actually got nicer. And I was like, what the fuck? She's like, yeah, like if something pissed you off you just be like, I'm done, I'm out of here. Like, that's kind of, it's not sociopathic, but in a sense it's reminiscent of it, right? I don't give a fuck, just go. Right, because my amygdala is smaller at that time, right? So that's the whole thing. But here's what I was going to get to. COX-2. What is COX-2? Some might ask. So I had a picture of it in the Snapchat memory I read just a little bit ago. Let me pull it up. COX-2 is what's going to prevent neurodegeneration when you're smoking weed. So the people that smoke more weed, like I said, are going to have lower levels of COX-2. Higher levels of COX-2, aka this will prevent them from having as much brain damage. And here, look, this is the structure stuff of how it works. So, like, pretty much smoke weed, it goes and affects the CB1R gene, I think that is, or maybe receptor, I don't know. And then that affects a bunch of receptors, which goes to, bro, I'm not reading all these. Pretty much, it goes from receptor to receptor, gene to gene, hitting different things, right? Which eventually turns to COX-2. And more levels of COX-2 increase more resistance to the brain damage done by weed. So, like I said, the people that smoke weed more often have higher levels of COX-2. But get this is my theory, okay? This isn't a stated thing. It's like, I think that people that had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents that smoked weed more are going to just automatically have higher levels of COX-2, because alcoholics, when they have kids, they're pretty much altering the way that their kids are going to intake alcohol, right? Genetics play a role in how the body metabolizes alcohol and how it responds. So people that have, for example, Eastern Europeans, Eastern Europeans suffer a lot less consequences of drinking alcohol. I've noticed this. A lot of my Eastern European friends, they don't really get hungover. They normally are fine when they're drunk. Like they're not like super out of it and stupid and stuff. They can normally drink a lot of alcohol before they black out, before they start to suffer consequences. So why is this? Well, their bloodlines are of alcoholic descent. Their bloodlines all drink a lot of alcohol. So because of this, they just have less problems with it. And so I theorize that people coming from certain genomes, right, certain ethnic areas where people would frequently smoke weed, I think that they're going to suffer less consequences, right? And I also think that you could partially see this with certain racial groups functioning better smoking weed. For example, I noticed that a lot of black people are more functional off the bat smoking weed than white people. I mean, yeah, obviously that's a huge overgeneralization. There's outliers, of course. But generally speaking, I think that's true. And yeah, I know, guys, that weed comes from Asia. Don't at me, bruh. And I just noticed that, like, especially Eastern European people and a lot of the northern white groups struggle a lot more when they smoke weed. They're a lot more messed up and out of it, right? Because those groups of people never smoke weed. Like, Eastern Europeans hate weed. That's a whole thing. So, try and up your COX-2 with your diet. Look into it, see what you can do to make it better. And yeah, that sums it up. Thank you for listening. I'd say stop smoking weed every day. You're not gonna get famous. It's like I said in that one video, these N-words be zanned out like, I don't know how you finna get rich. It's true. How you finna get rich? How you gonna have the good ideas in your mental when you forget all them? How are you gonna come up with anything new? How are you gonna change anything? Like, yeah, guys, I get it. Not everyone's got the desire to change the world. But why would you make it worse? Why would you just make it harder for you to figure out stuff? You know? Alright. That's all, guys. That's all. If you're at the point where, like, you can't eat or sleep without smoking weed, bro, stop. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I know it sucks. You're gonna be suffering for 3 days. I'd also like to say this. It's weird because every time that I smoke weed heavily for a period of time, I think to myself, oh, dude, I've damaged my brain so much. Like, this is so bad. But, I don't know. It's like, whenever I stop, I just feel like I'm the same, you know? I always, like, freak myself out about it, and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm done for. But, like, normally it's fine. Yeah, but there's no research on COX-2 levels being variant to a large extent between racial groups. I did find something talking about the COX-2 gene associated with increased risk of colorectal cancer among Caucasians than other groups. But I mean, there's not a significant tie between COX-2 and that type of cancer anyways. So it's like, whatever. Anyways, yeah, thank you for listening. Kind of a long rant. Sorry. Don't be like that guy, though. Don't be tossing and turning and shit. It's like, people are like, well, weed isn't addictive. My friend, homeless people smoke weed. If there's homeless people spending their money unnecessarily on something for pleasure, it's probably addictive, right? I mean, and it's like I said, guys, it's not addictive because it's going to make your body physically crave it and you're going to develop a chemical dependence. It's addictive because your neurological structure changes in order for you to be on it, if that makes sense, right? Like I said, your dopamine levels drop, so you feel a need to up them, but obviously you only feel this after doing it in a habitual sense. Yeah, comment any thoughts below. Yeah, sorry, kind of lengthy, kind of wordy. Stay safe, guys.